Hi, welcome to this introduction to UVIS lesson. Over the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to try to introduce the UVIS application to new users. So we're kind of assuming at this point that you have a capability to log in and launch the application, but beyond that, we're not going to assume too much in the way of UVIS knowledge. More specifically, here's kind of the things we're going to cover in the next series of discussions. The application architecture from a sort of a big picture standpoint. We're not going to delve too much into the technical details, but just sort of give you an overview of how UVIS is put together so that you understand it a little bit from an end user perspective, what it all means to you. Then we'll look at how UVIS sort of divides up the application into little sub-applications. And these are primarily broken up along functional lines. And you'll see how this controls the menu and how it's structured and how you navigate the system and how we name screens as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll go into detail in the menu and toolbar functions. We'll kind of go down each one of these items on the menu and toolbar just to make sure you understand how they function and what they do, because some of them are a little unique to database applications and probably foreign to you if you're not or if you don't have any experience with Oracle Forms applications in the past. We'll also look at some terminology in UVIS that may be a little bit different than what you're used to locally, and some user interface elements that are somewhat unique but spread throughout the application. So we'll try to make sure you understand how those function and what they do for you. And then we'll sort of close up with some new user pitfalls, what we commonly see new users struggle with when they're new to the UVIS system. We're going to break up this lesson across several videos just so the file sizes don't get too crazy and we don't drag on too much in any single video. Starting out with, what is UVIS? Well, if you learn nothing else, you'll know what the acronym stands for. The acronym is the Universal Veterinary Information System. That's UVIS. We call it an enterprise level system because it seems to span a lot of functionality across the labs and hospitals, so thus the enterprise tag here. We do divide the application up into a hospital and a labs application. It can be employed as an individual application in those two areas, or it can be combined as an integrated hospital labs system as well. There are kind of two versions of the application available right now, a client-server version and a three-tier version. I'm not sure what each individual site is running. In your case, if you're running it in a browser, you're running a three-tier version. If you're kind of running it from a Windows icon on your desktop, chances are you're running the client-server version. We'll talk a little bit about the differences in those here in the application overview. UVIS is based on an Oracle database on the back end, so no matter what version of the system you're running it against a relational database on the back end. We'll talk a little bit about what that means in terms of how the application functions, and you'll see that that really kind of makes a difference in how you interact with it. And finally, UVIS was built on Oracle Development Tools, Forms, and Reports. That really doesn't matter a whole lot to you as an end user, but it does give you the ability to extend functionality with that same tool set if you choose to at your site. Okay, I talked earlier that we had two versions, both the client-server version and a three-tier version. So here's a nice little colorful slide on what a client-server version looks like. This is sort of your classic Windows application where we load a CD into our drive and we load a piece of software on our Windows machine. That's sort of the client-server world. We've loaded the Oracle Forms runtime on that client machine, and it in turn is calling UVIS screens. It also is doing the communication to the database for us. So that client application running on your PC is talking directly to the database. And if you'll see on the right hand side, that Oracle database that we're storing the information in is split into two components for hospital and labs, meaning there are two separate instances for those two parts of the application. This really doesn't matter a whole lot to you as an end user, but sometimes it impacts how you can interface the screens, the fact that we're crossing instances to connect to labs or connect to hospital. The three-tier version of the application sort of looks like this. We throw that red middle tier in the middle of it all. And now, rather than have the client talk directly to the database, the client simply talks to the middle tier and the middle tier talks to the database. What this sort of buys us on the client side is we don't have to load that Forms runtime anymore. All we need is a browser with a Java virtual machine running. In this case, we're depending on the Sun Java plugin being loaded and running in that browser. So the first time you connect to the version 4 UVIS, it's going to check and make sure that your browser has that Sun Java VM loaded and running, and if not, it's going to go download it. So your initial connection to UVIS 4 will probably mean that your browser is going to go download a plugin, and it'll take a while to download and install. But then once that's done, you're free and clear, and subsequent connections will be much faster. Same database on the back end, and in fact it's possible to run UVIS version 3 and UVIS version 4 together. We could run them side by side, and that's actually what we do here at the Ross Group, is we have both running concurrently. Alright, that's been a big picture overview of the application. Not a lot of detail there. Next up, we're going to talk about how we break down the application into sub-apps.